Good afternoon and welcome back to episode 91 of Legal Tech Live. I've got Nnamdi and Feargus of Define. That's trydefine.com. I was really upset. Our audio in our first discussion with this group was not very good. There was some technical issues. We think we've got that fixed. I wanted to redo this so that they've got a great audio, if for nothing else for posterity, because the story is a fantastic story. I want them to have something good to remember from the early days of Try Define. Nnamdi and Feargus, welcome back. Thank you for your willingness to do this again. And if you would, for our viewers who hadn't heard before, didn't hear the live version and haven't listened or read about you, Nnamdi, give us a little background on your experience, and Feargus, a little background on your experience. We'll start with Nnamdi, and then how Define came to be.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Nick, and really glad to be back. Thanks for having us again. So, I guess my background is probably quite similar to many technology, people who've ventured into sort of the legal technology world, in that I have a background and I was a lawyer. So I actually trained and qualified as a lawyer here in the UK. I worked for a firm called Freshfields, which is, one of the Magic Circle law firms here. I joined as a trainee solicitor and qualified into the finance department. So I was a finance lawyer. I practiced for about 4.5 years, where I basically did, mainly sort of helping with sort of, leverage financing, and also did some, high yield sort of issues as well. After a while of practicing law, as much as I enjoyed, the profession, and I sort of really enjoyed sort of the transactions and the clients we work with, I'm quite entrepreneurial. I've always been very entrepreneurial natured. So I've always been sort of focused on, how can I sort of try and see if I can go and start a business and grow a business, with my own two hands, essentially. So I was always, even as a lawyer, looking for opportunities, what would be the right thing to do. And actually, being a lawyer, we're naturally trained to be quite risk averse in everything we do. So, it really took me many, many years to, at least, 3 years to really think about, what would be the right opportunity to follow. And actually that came, and I'll let Fergus sort of probably go more into the story of how that came about with Define, but actually came about through a very chance meeting with Fergus. So I met Fergus when I first joined Freshfields. He had just come over from another firm, and I'll let him sort of talk about that. And it was really because of sort of a situation that's quite unique to probably Fergus and maybe a handful of others here in the UK. That's how the opportunity for Define came about, and that's how the business started. I'll let Fergus sort of venture into more into detail about that.
Perfect. Feargus, please tell us about this, because I mean, I just loved this story from day one. So it's a joy to be back with you guys on this, because the story is so good.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's a pleasure. It's always nice to hear you. So thanks for having us back to do the re-recording, and Nnamdi as well. Thanks for handing over. So my background is a little bit different to Nnamdi's, in the sense that I'm slightly older, but also the fact that I'm registered blind. I don't know, it probably doesn't come across very well on these kind of video chat things, but actually I've almost got zero vision at all, so I can't really read anything on paper. Everything I do is via, assistive technology. But the beginning of my story is essentially like years back, I originally qualified. I did a BA and MA in history at Trinity College in Dublin, and then went on to do a grad dip in computer science. And after that, then I'd worked at Microsoft and Compaq for about 3-4 years. And then my eyes kind of deteriorated, and I was unable to kind of continue that career path, because ultimately the technology didn't really exist at the time to kind of support that, So in choosing an alternative career, I went back to university and studied law, And then while I was at law school, I was married to my wife, Hailey, and she actually read all of my law books to me and recorded them. And that's how basically I studied law, was by actually, recording lectures and seminars and her recordings. So, again, the technology was kind of not fully there to be able to kind of, access the information in a way that I possibly thought it could be at some point or another, you know. And fortunately, I did well, you know, like it must have been her voice or something, because I did graduate summa cum laude out of our law school, which was like King's College in London. So that opened a lot of doors despite my disability, because it's very hard to ignore somebody with a first class honours degree and then also on top of that somebody who's blind when they're
Right.
graduating top 9-10 people of their year, you know. So that opened up the door then, and I did my training contract at a firm called Allen Overy, which, like Freshfields, is one of the Magic Circle law firms, like kind of one of the major 4 or 5 law firms. After being at A&O, then I kind of went over to Freshfields, but you know, it was at A&O and through my career then at Freshfields that, like, you know, I started noticing particular issues with the documentation that I was being given to work on, you know. And it's like, when you look at a legal document, and I don't know how many of your viewers out there are actually familiar with the structure or the geography of a legal document, but what you have is you have a whole bunch of defined terms at the very beginning of the document.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to enter into the provisions and the clauses. And now each of those defined terms is defined uniquely to that document. So you might have landlord means XYZ, rent means ABC, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But every time you see those terms used in the document, you actually have to either remember what they were, or you have to look for the meaning by going back to the beginning of the document. And typically, you know, the way that lawyers used to do this typically is they'd either have a hard copy of the document printed out, useless for me, of course. They'd split the screen on their computer screen and have like the definition section on one side and then the provisions that they're reading. Again, grossly inefficient, because you're reading with the right side and you see a term, then you go to the left and you have to kind of scroll through them one way or the other to find your definition. Or they would do like a Control F and look for the key word. Maybe they'd bold it or something, you know?
Right.
And that, for me being blind, like you can imagine, you know, how much additional time that was adding to me, you know. It's like grossly inefficient. But equally at the same time, I had a background in IT, you know, and I was kind of going, like, that's like, this is the 21st century. There has to be some solution to this. And this is where then the serendipity of meeting Nnamdi and his entrepreneurial spirit and just generosity of spirit in general comes into play. Because when I first started at Freshfields, Nnamdi actually was a trainee there. And the very first case that I worked on at Freshfields, Nnamdi was assigned to me as the kind of junior on that case, you know. Okay. And Nnamdi was just like super interested. He was just like, damn, like, how do you do that? How do you do your work? Like, you know, like, it's hard enough for sighted people. Like, how do you do it? And I'd show little tricks that I developed over the years, you know. And, you know, he just kept at it. Like, he just kept showing this curiosity, you know. And I don't know whether it's just instinctively he knew that there was something behind there. There has to be something there that maybe could unfold into something else. And then, like, one day he just said, well, you know, if you had a dream solution, what would that look like to you? And that's then when Nnamdi and I put our heads together and really started thinking about, well, how could I solve my problem? Like, what would be ideal for me? And when we kind of ironed out the kind of efficiency that would be great for me, that then was really, I think, when Nnamdi was like, the penny dropped for Nnamdi, I think, big time at that point. Because then he was like, you know what, Fergus, like, actually, this solution, like, isn't actually just something that would be helpful to you. I think it would be helpful to every lawyer. And that's then when we really started getting excited about the concept itself.
Yeah,
you know?
And I love this aspect of your story, of both your stories. So Nnamdi, tell us a little bit about, were you inspired both by how do I help my friend to do his job better, or my colleague? Were you inspired by that, or were you also was it a combination of, man, I think we can find a solution that would help this and that would be good, but also was it more on the personal level or more on the solution level?
I think Yeah, I think as Fergus said, it was just a series of sort of fortuitous events, really, because what happened is that Fergus and I sort of sat together. We sort of thought, okay, how do we make the process more efficient for you, Fergus, starting first of all, right? So we put our heads together and we were like, okay, this is how we think it should work to help you, because obviously with all the technology he had, it still didn't get him all the way in terms of efficiency. So actually, when Fergus and I first came up with a solution, it was very much tailored towards trying to make things more efficient to Fergus being a blind lawyer. It was actually when we, created the first sort of prototype, as you'd like, and I started testing it to, and I quickly sort of, as Penny said, the penny dropped. I was like, actually, this is like, I could use this for my job. It's not just Fergus that, it would assist. It would also make me more efficient in what I do day to day. So I think it was really like a perfect storm, something that really, I guess the way we see it is that we set about trying to solve a solution for a blind solicitor, and it ended up being a solution that that solved a problem which everybody else has, actually. So yeah, that's
and really
the best way to describe it.
And almost beyond just solicitors or lawyers, I think we discussed previously, like this is a solution we often have when there's a set of defined terms in any sort of document. We can get to that, but so that is just one of those things that I thought was fantastic. Yeah, it was. I called it, I think previously, or I've been saying it, accessibility inspired, but accessibility inspired solution that solved a problem for a lot of folks. So describe the solution to us. It's Fergus you did some already, Fergus, but just describe how a user uses Define.
Yeah, no, so absolutely. So it's come on sort of, since sort of where we started, just allowing you to sort of access defined terms. But what Define essentially is, firstly, it's a Microsoft Word plugin. So it was very important actually to us when we developed this. So we thought about creating sort of a separate platform, but it was really important to us, being lawyers. I think one of the good things about sort of having lawyers go out to try and solve the problem for the sector that they know very well is that they actually understand the pain point quite well. So we knew that actually lawyers are absolutely, they love Word. They're probably not going to, they spend most of their working day in Word, either on Microsoft Word, or probably on Outlook, checking emails. So we knew that, that is an environment that is completely intuitive to lawyers, and they're probably, not going to leave that environment anytime soon. And, I'm not saying that won't happen in the future, but I can't see happening. So it was very important that we try to meet, essentially the customer where they were, trying to, rather than trying to create a solution and say, hey, leave your natural habitat and try and sort of get used to this new way of doing things. So that's probably the first thing to mention. So Microsoft Word plugin, and what it allows you to do is basically access information in legal contracts, right? So, naturally it started sort of with defined terms, but then we realized actually it's not just defined terms you need to access, it's other provisions, right? So I may be on clause, 31, and clause 31 may refer to schedule 7. And again, I'm having to sort of navigate to schedule 7, leave clause 31 in order to understand what that particular schedule says.
Could be 15 or 20 pages in advance that
absolutely. So what Define does is essentially a plugin that basically allows you to access and navigate through legal documents without ever having to leave sort of where you are. We sort of, if you were to use a phrase, we call it a full sort of 360-degree solution, because what you can do is not only access information. So let's say I'm on clause 31 and I wanted to either see the meaning of a defined term, let's say majority lenders, or read what Schedule 7 says, I can actually view both of that information from Clause 31 without having to leave Clause 31. But I can go beyond that. If I actually wanted to edit Schedule 7 or edit the definition of majority lenders, I can actually do that without ever having to leave Clause 31. So what that does is that not only does it make that process more efficient, which is sort of a given, but it actually helps increase, or it has other benefits. So, for example, one of the big benefits that, people tell us when they use a software is that actually it assists massively with accuracy. So one of the issues which Fergus sort of highlighted with the current sort of methodology of doing things is that you're always having to necessarily leave the context of where you are, be it if you're scrolling up and down or you're using a hard copy documentation, especially when you have what you call embedded or nested information. So within sort of the definition of majority lenders, it's probably going to cross-revert to another definition and another definition. And by the time you know it, you're on the 10th sort of definition by reference, right? So you're having to always sort of navigate through sort of these different provisions. You're having to leave the context of where you started. So what Define allowed you to do is now you can access all of that information from where you are without having to leave the context of where you started.
Fantastic. And Daniel Jaffe's here watching us in the Facebook group. Daniel, if you've got any questions for the team, please send them over. So if I'm on, just for example, if I'm on majority lenders in clause 31, do I just have to highlight and right click?
Yeah, so basically it's sort of, we've sort of come a long way. Initially it was a highlight, but then we realized that actually the UI aspect was actually much better to just let the user know straight away that, you know, this is a defined term, or there's a reference here that is sort of tagged in the document. So it actually highlights for you. So the highlight, the default color we have currently is it's a green color, but I think people have said that they would also like to, you know, have the option to actually change the color if they want. But essentially all the defined terms and references or in the document is highlighted for you. All you have to do is just click on it. It pops up right there on the side panel, and then you can sort of edit and interact with that information from where you are. Yeah.
Excellent. And Fergus, did you have something to add there? And that's
I do. Yeah. Just a little bit, because I think Nnamdi pretty much covered it all in terms of how it actually works. And I think, you know, he brought up the point about the plugin, you know, and I think, you know, our MO generally has been, because we have the advantage of actually worked as kind of attorneys in really kind of high pressure environments, you know, kind of working till 2, 3 in the morning, 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, you know, like we've done kind of deals, both of us. I think like what we really understood was this was something that had to be simple to use, and it also had to be something that wasn't going to really interrupt the workflow of any of the people using it, you know. So that was part also of the reason why we chose to go with that kind of plug-in approach, because, you know, lawyers are notoriously bad at like picking up on kind of new technologies. And when you take them out of that environment that they're really familiar with, they're also really bad at adopting new technology outside of the environment that they use. And my experience, I think Nnamdi's experience, is that you have a lot of companies sometimes that try to offer solutions, and, you know, they're offering solutions, A, to problems that don't really exist in the minds of the people that they're trying to solve them for, but also they add so much functionality to the program that it becomes completely dysfunctional. Yeah, it's like you might use 1 or 2 things within that application, and that's about it, and all the rest of it just falls away, you know. So for us, the whole approach, like our kind of UI UX kind of basis, has been very much driven from the ground up. Like, you know, we're constantly getting feedback from actual working attorneys, like, how would this work better for you, you know, as a fee earner, as somebody who's bringing in the money to the companies.
Yeah. So you're talking productivity tool that's built right into their workflow, essentially.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, and it makes just great sense. We've seen the difficulties with the standalone. A standalone software solution might have a really great feature, but and there's been plenty of standalone solutions that are so helpful on this one issue that, yeah, I'll open it up and I'll do that. But you're talking about where they're spending most of their time and how do we
where the money is. Yeah. Really. And to be honest with you, Nick, too, it's like, you know, the thing with that kind of standalone application, you know, it's a nightmare to get it approved and through the procurement process, to get it installed, to get it, you know, because, you know, they're going to be sitting up something on their servers that they know is a foreign technology, a foreign application, and, you know, the things that you have to go through to get that done. Whereas actually with a plugin for Word, it's something that law firms generally, they already have Word sitting on their server. Yeah, they already have like plugins plugged into that. So for them, the idea of plugging into Word isn't as difficult a hurdle for them to cross as it might be with other technologies. Yeah, you know, so the implementation process actually becomes an awful lot easier for the firm if it's built into their already existing platforms and environments.
Yes, that's a great great aspect of what you, and I understand that Word is very difficult to build with, you know, to develop with. So you guys have put in a lot of the hard work in order to make it easier on your user on the back end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually, you know, and just, you know, just to be clear, there are definitely, you know, parts of the job where sort of standalone platforms work really well, you know,
Sure.
and just, you know, one of the things I think about is due diligence, you know, that makes sort of perfect sense. But yeah, no, what, you know, Word is, and I think actually that's part of the reason why a lot of people try and avoid, you know, developing sort of plugins to Word. It's notoriously difficult to actually develop or to code into. You know, we've had to basically, as Fergus said, build everything from the ground up. We've had to build our own libraries, write our own sort of, you know, algorithms and everything. So it's definitely not come without its challenges. But I think, you know, the perseverance that we've, you know, had to stick into it and sort of stick into our sort of beliefs there has really sort of helped us a lot, you know, greatly, because now we're in the process of actually now sort of, you know, working with our customers. I think they really value the fact that, you know, as Fergus says, we're offering this to within an environment and within sort of the platforms which their users are used to working within.
Excellent. And Daniel Jaffe, who is a lawyer out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, says he's sorry if he missed this earlier, but this is a great question for you. I'm not sure we covered it last time. Who's your ideal target lawyer profile? Who would get the most value from this product?
It's a great question.
Yeah, no, so I think, yeah, go on, Fergus. Yeah, sure.
I think primarily what you'd find like in the legal sector would be a lot of the transactional guys. Yeah. So like when I say a lot of transactional guys, I generally mean kind of corporate banking, finance, bonds, you know, people that are doing prospectus, trust deeds, agency agreements, subscription agreements, SPAs, that kind of stuff. Facility agreements, whatever. Then like when it comes to the other types, I think you could definitely get in real estate finance, where you end up using a lot of definitions in real estate and real estate financing. I think tax, because they review an awful lot of the documents that all the transaction guys are working on, because they're looking at it from a different perspective. I think litigation maybe less so, but it's not that it's not useful. Yeah, it's like, you know, you're going through witness statements, or if you're, for example, like if you're in arbitration, let's say, and you've got a statement of case, it's like, you know, 200, 300 pages long, and something's been defined in the middle of a paragraph somewhere on page 36, and you're reading page 130. You know, like, how are you going to find your definition? You know, you still have to go backtracking through your document to actually look for the defined term. Yeah. So maybe not as much litigation, but definitely it's pretty much all the other stuff. And generally, you're dealing with contracts. Even in litigation, if you look at the IP guys, you know, an IP licensing agreement, all of those other kind of areas, you know, generally contractual stuff where you've got the defined terms. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, just to reinforce what Fergus says, actually, so the firms we do work with, that's basically sort of what we found. So we found that it tends to be the transactional lawyers who get, you know, people working on sort of long, complex, you know, lengthy documents. They tend to get more usage out of it. So, you know, some of the practice areas which Fergus said, and actually it really does depend. So when we've done sort of received feedback on terms of the time saving, it's ranged from sort of corporate finance, sort of saying, you know, this can save me up to, you know, usually save me sort of half an hour to an hour a day, to the litigation guys who have said, actually, probably I don't use it as often as the banking lawyers would, so I'll probably be saving myself sort of 30 minutes, half an hour a week. So it really depends on practice. But I'll say it's geared definitely towards. It was geared. You know, this solution was solving a problem which Fergus and I faced as banking lawyers. So you know, that's basically where it started out. So we were always reviewing very lengthy documentation. So we were trying to make that process a lot harder, a lot easier. So it's definitely a solution that's geared towards people working on complex documentation. Yeah.
And I think Nick Nnamdi taps actually on a really interesting point there too. It's like, you know, when you have people saying, you know, oh, this potentially saves me 30 minutes an hour a day, like in the life of a lawyer, that's actually a considerable amount of time. Not just like for lifestyle in the sense that you might get out of the office earlier or what, but actually in terms of like billing, you know, and because we charge by the unit, you know, in the States, it's maybe 6-minute units, or in the UK, generally it's 15-minute units. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, you start imagining like somebody who's saving an hour a day, let's say, you know, and their billing rate is maybe, I don't know, anywhere between $300 and $600 an hour. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, now you multiply that by maybe 100, 200 lawyers in your practice, potentially, you can see how quickly the numbers scale up in terms of the efficiency that's being created generally within the company itself. Yeah.
Right.
Not just the fact that the life is made easier for the individual, but actually on a company-wide level, there's huge savings to be had by creating that kind of efficiency. You know?
And this is one of those things. I was just talking with somebody on Thursday night. This is one of those things that oftentimes lawyers who are less tech savvy might say, well, why do I want to save that time and save those hours? The truth is because you can then get more work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way we see it is that it's time now which you can now sort of do as you please with. It's time which you sort of get the freedom to do what you want. And actually there are various things you can do with that time, right? You can, you know, say, actually, you know, I want my lawyers to have, you know, a better work-life balance. So I'm going to give them back an hour of their day rather than, you know, having to leave the office at 1 a.m. They can go home at, you know, midnight, you know, or you can say, alternatively, go through the route that you said, you know, you could say, actually, that's an hour now, which allows me to now build on other matters for either the same client or find another client and actually do work for another client. So I think in terms of, you know, yeah, absolutely. I think the way sort of people, when we discuss with the customers we work with, the way that they do see that value, they do see that sort of free time as time which actually empowers them to do, you know, what they want with, either sort of, you know, use it to sort of increase the bottom line, or use it to help and make their
generate more business
much
if that's
easier.
their goal.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there is a misunderstanding along with a lot of law firms that these tools that make you more efficient is going to just cut down on your billable hours, and that's simply just not true. If your goal is to go out there and find more business, then the efficiency tools will allow you to find more business.
But also your clients are just not going to accept it, right? I think clients are getting a lot smarter at this. You know, they're not just, you know, we've got to, I think lawyers need to start trying to meet their clients where they are. You know, your clients are demanding you to be a lot more efficient. They're going to be sort of, you know, being a lot more scrutiny on your billing. You know, why are you spending X amount of hours to do something which should take, you know, 20% less time than what you've billed. You know, and actually ultimately it actually impacts your bottom line, because ultimately what's going to happen is that the client is going to say, I'm not going to pay for that. You're going to have to write that off. And, you know, you now end up sort of, because you're trying to, you know, not, you know, be sort of adverse to technology and to improve the efficiency, you end up actually losing out, and that impacts your bottom line. So I think it's client driven actually ultimately.
And tell me if this is true. I, not having come from a big law background, when I heard this, I was surprised, because I thought, not having the big law background, that a lot of these big law firms had these ongoing relationships with major companies that they were doing work for. When I found out, no, most of this stuff goes out for request for proposal. And
Absolutely.
So if you're doing this request for proposal and you say, no, we can do this at 30% less than the other, that is business that you're grabbing that you may not otherwise
absolutely
have.
Oh, yeah, and actually, just very quickly, if you wouldn't mind, so there's just one thing. Actually, there are some clients that I'm aware of, some of the financial institutions here in the UK, that actually explicitly demand in their sort of their panel submission, you know, how do you use technology to become? They actually demand firms to actually state how they are using technology to be more efficient in their day-to-day roles. So it's actually something, like I said, that is becoming more and more client driven. Sorry, Fergus.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that it's actually because what Nnamdi's talking about there just brought something to mind with an earlier question or an earlier comment that you'd made about, you know, the applicability of the program beyond just kind of like law firms. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, you know, of course, like one of our major targets will also be the corporate clients of those law firms, because, you know, their directors, their in-house lawyers, they've got a whole team of people for every single transaction that's being done. All of these people also internally on the client side have to look at those documents too, and we want to make everybody's life easier and more efficient. Yeah. So of course, like, the corporates, the major accounting firms, etc., are all proposed targets of this as well. Yeah. It's not just a tool for in-house or a tool for lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, what's actually quite interesting is that our first customer was actually an accountancy firm, which is quite interesting.
It is
the sort of legal department of an accountancy firm, and we're currently in discussion. We're currently in an advanced pilot with a large financial institution here in the UK. So it's actually, although we very much sort of started off, thinking sort of big law, because that's what our background was. Where the journey is actually leading us is that it's actually, seems to be something which your accountancy firms, your financial institutions, your corporate legal teams are looking at and saying, actually, we could use that to help us do our day-to-day jobs a little bit better as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think the one that popped in my head where I knew there's significant amount of document editing was pharmaceutical companies, and I forget exactly in which space that they do it, but I think it's within their intellectual property and things like that where they have to define it.
Licensing agreements, etc.
Right, and I thought, this tool really is for anybody who's in-depth use of Microsoft Word on a daily basis. That's where they're spending their time. It doesn't have to be lawyers. This is Legal Tech because you guys were lawyers first. I do a Legal Tech show. That's what it is, Legal Tech, but it really is a much broader application than that for anybody who really is spending a ton of time in Microsoft Word using documents that have terms that are defined and having to refer to those terms.
Absolutely.
And so tell us about how I do forget this aspect from our first discussion, but are you selling it? Is it a per user solution? How are we doing that?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. So it's obviously based, we do a per user model, and we do it based on, it's sort of a sliding scale essentially. So the more users you get, the sort of price tends to slide downwards essentially, and then in terms of how we charge, it tends to be on a value based model. So we're very conscious to make sure that we're essentially charging sort of the value we're giving to the firms. And what that means is that when we work with firms, it actually, our customers tend to not receive sort of an off-the-shelf solution. So when the process of actually onboarding a customer, we usually go through a pilot process, which can be anything from sort of a few weeks to a month or so. And we work with them. We take on board their feedback, and we're actively, implementing the feedback, so that by the end of the pilot process, the product which they sort of started with is quite different, to what they end up with. So we tend to make sure that we're delivering, a product that sort of creates value for the individual needs of the customer.
Excellent. And Fergus, anything to add on that aspect?
Yeah, no, I think I think Nnamdi pretty much hit home with that. It just really depends on the client themselves and the level of service they require from us in order to add value to their business. I think that's ultimately down to, because, like, every firm has its own environment. Some firms may use Word in a different way to others, or they might have things set up internally slightly differently in order to stand out. So whatever tweaks and whatever customizations we may need to make to our application within reason, we obviously do and will. Yeah, but it's all about working hand in hand with them, because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, what we're providing is a service. We're selling a product to people to provide a service for them in creating efficiency. And it's like, without customers, you have nothing. Yeah. So it's kind of like, we obviously want to build close relationships with our customers so that we have that kind of long-term thing going forward with each other, where you trust each other, you work with each other, you help each other to make your product more efficient, because everybody wins in that kind of an environment. You know, we're not in competition with them. We want to collaborate with them.
Excellent, excellent. And for folks, we've got about 5 or 10 more minutes here. So if you have questions, our guests are Nnamdi and Feargus of Define. You can find them at trydefine.com. If you have last minute questions, please submit them. I see we have several of you watching over on the Facebook Live. So if you have questions, please submit before the show is done. What is the go-to-market here, gentlemen? Are you focused on the UK market right now because that's where you're located, or is this something we can easily pick up over here in the US at this time because it's software-based?
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a really interesting question. So again, we started off focusing in the UK, and actually that's where the primary focus is, because there are a lot of law firms and corporate legal teams here in the UK. But what's been actually really surprising is that in recent months we've definitely been getting a lot more sort of inbound requests from firms all over the world, really. We've actually recently just signed up LawCrest, which is a firm in Australia, of all places, where we've currently we got contacted recently by a firm in Guam. Really surprisingly, we've been contacted by firms in South Africa. So it's really cool to sort of know that we always needed something that's applicable. English, it governs probably about 90% of contracts globally anyway, right? So most contracts are written in the English language. So Define should really, it shouldn't matter if you're in the UK or you're in the States, right? As long as your document is written in English, it should sort of work quite in a similar fashion. So, but it's really nice to actually see that there is the potential for this to sort of be applicable globally. But we're focused in terms of there are a lot of law firms in the UK, so that's when we do a lot of our sort of initial sort of marketing. But we're very happy to speak to firms who contact us from outside if needs be.
Excellent. Excellent. Have you found, have you found, Feargus, that others have used this as an accessibility solution unrelated to law?
I know one or two people that use it.
You do?
Not unrelated to law, but I know of another kind of visually impaired solicitor who uses it and loves it.
Because I'd hate to see it lose that aspect, because I think it's just such a great inspiration aspect.
No, of course.
There's a really cool story to this, Feargus, about the FT story.
Yeah. Go on, you tell it, Nnamdi. Go on.
No, I mean, so we got basically on our LinkedIn, we were getting tagged, and we didn't even realize. We were, one morning we got tagged, and basically there's a visually impaired lawyer at one of the firms who've sort of licensed the software. And he basically he did some interview with the FT, with the Financial Times, which is the equivalent of the Wall Street Journal, I guess, in the US. And one of the things he said he was talking about sort of being a visually impaired lawyer and sort of accessibility tools for the profession. And one of the really nice things that sort of he put in his interview was that actually, one of the solutions that he has found has really improved his day-to-day work in terms of accessibility was Define. So it was really nice. It was sort of like what do they call it when sort of it comes 360, to know that it started off from from a visually impaired lawyer, like the problem started with, and we're now sort of seeing other visually impaired lawyers actually find benefit with the tool. So that was really nice to read. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
that had to feel good, though. I mean, this is the solution we were trying to solve before we discovered that it was.
I think one of my life goals was to to be mentioned in the Financial Times. So, I think, I can sort of rest easy now. That felt absolutely great, and very, very, humble to have been given the opportunity.
For me personally, it's like, it's very emotional, like for me, because one of the reasons I kind of maybe changed careers to a certain degree was because, to give the time to developing and creating this product, but I still understood and still lived with the inefficiencies that I had, like when I worked and when I was doing the work. So to see younger kind of attorneys, lawyers coming through that are visually impaired, being able to use something you created from your own experience, that makes their lives and their jobs much more viable and efficient. From like a personal point of view, it's really kind of quite emotional. Yeah, it's like one of the things where you look at it and you kind of go, "Shit, man!" It's like actually helping to change people's lives in that sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
on the real, like for me, that's the real bottom line. Yeah, I know there's plenty of others, but for me, being able to help to change somebody's life by making things easier for them is yeah.
And that was totally unsolicited too. So the impact that what inspired it, you are actually back to having that impact by somebody who is dealing with the same inefficiencies. And I think it's just fantastic. It's really what I love about this whole story. I was tweeting about this story and how much I enjoyed it was inspired by our last discussion. And Catherine Bamford responded something. I guess you guys know Bam Legal, and she's like, "Oh, I love me some Try Define or something like that." So, and I said, "Well, hey, I do too now. This is a really great story." But that's the cool thing.
Catherine Bamford is great. I call her the queen of legal tech here in the UK. You know,
right.
She's definitely to get that sort of response from someone like her, we're very humble to hear.
It was. I forget exactly what it said, but that's how I recall it. And I was like, I can see it too, because that's the really cool thing about certain software solutions, right? The inspiration to solve a problem comes from a variety of different frustrations, and this one was just a really great one because there is that human aspect of it that I really enjoyed. Gentlemen, is there anything we haven't covered that we should cover about the solution? Anything that we didn't cover this time?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's in a sort of, unless you sort of see a demo of it and sort of go through it, it's hard to sort of cover every sort of individual feature. But we've given a general sort of overview of what it does, but always happy to, if anyone has any questions, always happy to discuss sort of offline, in more detail.
Excellent. Yeah. And you guys have a great video, YouTube video right on trydefine.com on the main page there. It kind of gives you a little breakdown of it.
Absolutely.
So, and is there do you guys have some other demo videos on a YouTube channel or anything like that?
We're always happy to do demos. If you contact us, reach out to us via the website, or reach out to me, Nnamdi at trydefine.com. We're always happy to do demos. More than happy to show as many people as possible the software if they think it'll be useful to them.
Perfect. Yeah. So tell everybody we've got Nnamdi at trydefine.com is one place to get a hold of him, and that's Nnamdi at trydefine.com. And Feargus, would you like to? How do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, I could be found on LinkedIn, and I can also be emailed direct at Feargus at trydefine.com, and that's spelled FEARGUS at trydefine.com.
Okay, and you cut out there for just a sec, so it's FEARGUS at trydefine.com. The website is trydefine.com. I recommend you check it out. They are both fairly responsive on LinkedIn, I found. And gentlemen, Feargus, Nnamdi, thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed the time once again with your team, and I'm just really thrilled. If there's anything more that LegalTechLIVE can do for you going forward, don't be afraid to reach out.
That's really nice. No, thank you so much, Nick, and thanks again for sort of making the time to sort of interview us. Really appreciate this. It's not easy actually as a startup to sort of it's day to day. The honest truth is that it's difficult, but things like this we really do value, and so really appreciate sort of your time and also the time of your audience, your listeners, to actually listen to this. So really do appreciate that, and thanks for all the support.
Pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine. And Fergus, when you're back in Northern California, you got to reach out and let me know so we can get together.
100%, man.
For the audience, Fergus's wife is from an area maybe 45 minutes from where I'm at, so that is that's why that comes up. But Nnamdi, of course, you're invited to visit too when we can actually travel again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen, and we will be back Thursday night with Don't Get Mad, Get Paid. Don't Get Mad, Get Paid. That's for family divorce and custody issues, working on child support. So stay tuned for that. And gentlemen, thank you once again for being here. Don't disappear when we stop recording. And everybody, thank you for watching. Daniel, thanks for watching. I see you're still out there as well as some others lurking. Thank you all, and we'll see you on Thursday night. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.